all know him, Alex Barth. Alex, we got quite a bit to talk about today. Obviously, finally got news on roster cuts. We know what the 53 actually looks like now. I know that you're actually working on a piece about the 2018 draft, though, which I'm pretty
2022.
2022, I'm sorry, 2022. So there's so many numbers in my head right
now.
now.
I wish 2018 was just a year ago. That would be a good time.
Wouldn't it? So before we get into depth on each of the positions, we're just going to go through each one and see what each of our takes are. What are your thoughts exactly on the 2022 draft?
So I think, this has kind of been one of the big overarching takes today is that, look at this. All these guys are getting cut from 2022. So of their 10 picks, 5 got cut or traded in the last 2 days, all on offense. And a 6th, I think, is going to be out for an extended period of time coming up with Tyquan Thornton. We'll see if he ends up on IR. And so a lot of people want to jump down the, Patriots can't draft rabbit hole, which fine. Let me preface this by saying I tweeted this out today and I was accused of making excuses. This is not excuses. This is context. I am not excusing them for having a bad draft. I am explaining why and how they had a bad draft. And I think it's important to remember, I never judge drafts in hindsight. I think it's stupid. You can only go with the information you have at the time. So let's go with the information the Patriots had at the time. Where were the Patriots heading into the draft last year? Matt Patricia was replacing Josh McDaniels, taking over the offense. They were getting ready to install that Shanahan West Coast zone-based thing, whatever that was. So you look at who they drafted. Tyquan Thornton, especially, in the top 150 picks, Cole Strange, Tyquan Thornton, Pierre Strong, Bailey Zappe. These are guys, Zappe a little bit less, but the other 3, these are all guys that were drafted to play in a Shanahan zone-based offense.
Right.
Well, what happened? That completely fell apart. It didn't even make it through the season. The offense was shelved. And so now you look at, how can they give up on a guy like Pierre Strong this early? Why can't Tyquan make any headroom? Why are we so concerned about Cole Strange? Because they reached on players expecting the system to elevate those players. Right. They felt these guys will be more of a sure thing here because we're playing them into their strengths. And then they didn't end up doing that. I would have liked to see them give Pierre Strong a chance in their new offense because I think he has some abilities that would carry over. I would like to see we saw Tyquan Thornton get a chance in the new offense. It didn't really work. Cole Strange, the book's still out. I thought he really could have used this summer to improve, and he didn't get that because of injury. And he told us today he gained weight. He's up to 308 pounds, which for a guard in their new offensive system is not a lot. So I just think it's really interesting to look at that. I don't think this is – people are linking it to the drafts in 17, 18, and 19. I think it's different. Those drafts, to me, were more – they were drafting very much for the here and now. There was very little future outlook. They took a bunch of high floor, low ceiling players, banking on Brady to elevate, and then Brady left, and you lost that element. This is different. This is something I've said, and I said this on Patriots Beat with Brian Hines last week when Pierre Strong got traded, and people kind of jumped at me in the comments because I'm somebody who's gotten on Matt Patricia. People say it's just what I use to excuse Mac Jones, whatever. I was not exaggerating last year when I said Matt Patricia set them back years, and you're seeing that now because you have a whole draft that, and look, some of these guys will be back. They'll be back on the practice squad. Maybe even get back on the active roster. Tyquan Thornton will get healthy at some point. But you're seeing a whole draft that could end up essentially being a wash because they were drafted to play in an offense that they're never going to end up playing in because that offense itself was never going to end up working because they had to get rid of it. So there's even the big story today, which is Zappe, is kind of folded into that 2022 draft. And I think there's other things with Zappe beyond the offensive system where it comes to how the quarterback position was handled last year and Patricia and Belichick's handling of that you're seeing the coaching. And it's beyond Patricia. I'm bringing up Patricia because he's the face of what the offense was, but it's obviously just as much on Bill. He's the one who ultimately made the decisions to put the people in charge who were in charge. You're seeing the coaching decisions of last year have a lasting impact. And I think that, to me, is the big story of today's roster cuts.
And we're going to address all these players in terms of the system right now. But I will say, so Bailey Zappe, one, we're going to talk about, I guess we kind of start with quarterback here. It released Trace McSorley. That was pretty straightforward. We all knew that was going to happen. Malik Cunningham, I think he was someone where we were debating, is he going to make the roster? Is he going to be in the practice squad? I personally had him on the practice squad because they seemed to be either seriously considering him at wide receiver or they were hiding him as a quarterback because he wasn't undrafted for a reason. They gave him a big signing bonus, so clearly they wanted him. But I think the big difference maker, if he was to be poached off the practice squad, would have been if teams saw that he could really throw. I think there was enough of that it moved the needle where he's a legitimate candidate to get poached. So I think he's going to be on the practice squad. Bailey Zappe, we've seen him struggle significantly with the progressions in Bill O'Brien's offense. We see him hold on to the ball. It seems like his confidence has been shaken because the accuracy has been pretty inconsistent, especially once the pads came on. When you talk about the Shanahan system, it's relatively easy for quarterbacks because it doesn't ask them to do a whole lot. Like you look at Jimmy Garoppolo, an astounding number of his throws, especially downfield crossing routes. Like the Shanahan system's notorious for quarterbacks not really having to make those downfield throws to the sidelines. It's a very quarterback-friendly system. We saw last year with Bailey Zappe in that type of system where it was kind of like, all right, turn your brain off, don't make a mistake, and make the throws out of there. He was fine. He looked good, so much so that people thought that Mac Jones might have been a problem and wasn't really someone who should have been in that leadership role as a starting quarterback. Now we're seeing Bill O'Brien where he really gives his quarterbacks the keys of the kingdom and says, okay, you can make the adjustments. You need to be able to read what the defense is doing. I will put you in position to succeed. You need to be able to do all the work post-snap and make the right decisions, and that's not really where Bailey Zappe thrives. So relative to the quarterback position, I think you were spot on where I think after what we've seen in the preseason, there's not a huge risk of Bailey Zappe maybe getting poached because he didn't put a lot of good tape out in the past few games.
Yeah, I still don't love it. I get where they're and to people freaking out about this. They did this before. They did this in 2021 with Brian Hoyer. Now, it's a little different. Hoyer didn't have to go through waivers, but I think Ian Rappaport reported earlier that he thinks Zappe's going to get claimed. For that reason, I don't love it. I still think for all his warts this summer, here's the problem with the Bailey Zappe discourse in New England. You either had to believe he was actually the starter and better than Mac Jones, or you had to believe he sucked and didn't belong in the league. And in the reality, he's in the middle. He's a good backup quarterback. I've said from the beginning, I think he's somewhere between the 30th and 35th best quarterback in the NFL. So very low-end starter, high-end backup. I think Mac is probably in the 12 to 20 range right now, for reference.
That's pretty fair. Yep.
So and I think Zappe gets claimed. They had a good backup. They had him on a rookie contract. I don't think they needed to do this. Who did they get on the roster to do this? Shaun Wade, you probably could have gotten Shaun Wade through waivers. I feel like you get Shaun Wade through waivers before you get Bailey Zappe through waivers. Who are some of the other guys that might get there that made the team? I'm blanking off the top of my head. I'll have to pull it up. Going
through really quick. I don't think Sam Roberts.
Sam Roberts is a guy I think you could have gotten through waivers. Amir Speed's a guy I think you could have gotten through waivers. Absolutely. That's probably the list. Because the other thing you got to remember here is you just burned Bailey Zappe's rookie contract. He's now pending free agent if he comes back. So I don't, as rough of a summer as Bailey Zappe had, I don't love the idea that they essentially just threw away backup quarterback security for the next 3 years.
I get that, but I also do think that considering what we saw from Bailey Zappe, if something happened to Mac, I think they would have been better off. And I don't know what the veteran market is like from their perspective and who they're trying to bring in. But considering what Bill O'Brien asks of his quarterbacks, I do think that a veteran would probably be better in that backup role than someone like a Bailey Zappe. And we even heard that they're trying to get Trace McSorley back in some capacity. I don't personally love that. I don't think in terms of throwing ability and, consistency, he's an NFL quarterback. But, with the Zappe thing, I understand to a degree, especially because, and we'll talk about this as well, there were so many positions where they had to really stock guys up. Like you talk about offensive line, they have 11 offensive linemen. No one had that in their projection because 11 is a crazy number to have. But because of all their injuries, it kind of screwed them. And then you look at cornerback as well. Now, it's a little different because I think Amir Speed's more of a specialist, but he still can play cornerback. He's more like a Brandon Bolden where you're going to see mostly on special teams. But if something happens, he can't play cornerback. So there were certain positions where they had more bodies than I think people expected. And I guess they looked at it and were like, hey, we got to keep people in other positions. This is something we're willing to risk. But let's move on to running back so I'm not keeping you all night. They only kept two guys.
I would just say one thing on that last point. If they are going to go veteran, there's only two guys they should call. Colt McCoy and A.J. McCarron. That's pretty much the whole list. If Hoyer becomes free, I think him as well, but he's in Vegas. This isn't going to happen, but this would be one of the funniest things that I would laugh my ass off. Aiden O'Connell's outplayed Jimmy Garoppolo in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
Give me Jimmy Garoppolo to back up Mac Jones.
I like it. You actually made a lot of good points about A.J. McCarron. There's the Alabama connection. There's the Bill O'Brien connection. He's a fantastic fit. So running backs. Only kept 2. Ty Montgomery was released. I think we all expect that once people are put on injured reserve, short term, he's going to be coming back because they're not going in the season with 2 running backs. That's insane. J.J. Taylor was waived, and according to Karen Gregian, he's probably looking for greener pastures elsewhere, somewhere where he can actually have a role because he's been pretty much a career practice squad guy. Then Kevin Harris, another guy I think we expect to be back on the practice squad. C.J. Marable, we didn't really see much. Any surprises, any big takeaways from what happened at that position?
The J.J. Taylor thing interests me, and Karen Gregian reported that he doesn't necessarily want to come back on the practice squad. He wants to go somewhere that he's going to have a chance to play. I wonder if he thought that before seeing all the cuts, because if he comes back on the practice squad, he's the next guy up. Yeah. He's the 3rd guy. He'd probably be game day elevation. I wonder if maybe now he'd be more receptive to coming back, or even if maybe knowing that he feels that way and only having 2 running backs on the roster, if after somebody's IR'd, whether it's Tyquan Thornton or Riley Reif, I think these are the 2 guys that are the obvious picks, that he actually gets signed to a 53-man roster spot.
You don't think? What do you think of Ty Montgomery? You think he's actually gone?
You can't trust him. It's just tough. You can't trust him because he doesn't stay healthy. What are you doing? So I think maybe they bring him back on the practice squad. He's just such a risky guy to count on, given his injury. I just want to pull this up real quick to go back to it because it's a point a lot of people miss. And I confirmed this with Pat Cap earlier. When you waive somebody, you cut him. So if he gets claimed on waivers, he keeps his rookie deal, talking about Zappe. Otherwise, if you sign him to the practice squad, you sign him to a new contract. If you then elevate him to the practice squad, he gets a new contract. Maybe he agrees to a 3-year deal at little money, and it's whatever. But his rookie contract's gone. That is gone. If they sign him to the practice squad, at the end of the year, he becomes a free agent. He would have to sign a futures deal.
We saw that with Kevin Harris last season. They burned his rookie deal because he ended up on the practice squad.
So that's why sometimes you see teams keep certain rookies, even if it doesn't make sense. That's why I've talked about this, Taylor, and I know we're going to get to the offensive line, but they handcuffed themselves in this draft. They took 3 offensive linemen in the top 150. You can't cut those guys. You can't burn those contracts. It's poor asset management. And I'm not saying cutting Bailey Zappe or trading Pierre Strong was good asset management, but they put themselves in a position where they had to make a bad asset management move.
Yeah, I thought that Jake Andrews was somebody who might have ended up on injured reserve because he's not going to play this season. I don't even know if he's necessarily the top backup center because Ferentz is basically the Terminator. He's always going to be back. I don't think he'd really want to go
anywhere else. He made the team very quietly, didn't he?
I think he got cut, didn't he?
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
See, James Ferentz is just kind of in the background. He's always sort of in the background. He'll be back on the practice squad.
Yeah, 100%. So, I don't see that Jake Andrews comes back, but we'll get to that later as well. Wide receiver. Pretty much what we expected considering Kayshon Boutte only played 1 drive against the Titans. It seemed like he had done enough in camp and with that great play against the Packers that he was someone they weren't going to risk putting on waivers. This one's pretty straightforward. Season-ending injured reserve for Trey Nixon, and they waived Thyrick Pitts. Any big takeaways there?
I'm just glad they kept them all. I'm really glad because I'm not sold yet on Kayshon. And honestly, I'm not entirely sold on Demario Douglas. They're NFL players. To what extent, I don't know. No, but I mean, the people who are Demario Douglas 1,000-yard season.
Yeah, of course.
They're NFL players. To what extent, I don't know. Right? Are they top of the depth chart guys? Are they middle of the depth chart guys? Are they emergency guys? They both belong in the NFL, and that's not nothing. How many wide receivers have the Patriots drafted the last few years that didn't even belong in the NFL? I already feel better about both these guys than I ever felt about N'Keal Harry. But
sorry, go on.
No, but I'm just so the point is you still got to see what they are. They made enough progress though that I don't think the Patriots could afford to walk away from them because if you cut Kayshon Boutte and he goes somewhere else and he's a guy, you're going to be kicking yourself for a team that can't develop, that can't find wide receivers. So me and Evan have this developed. We never even planned this. This kind of became a thing just in the way we talk. When we talk about players, sometimes a player's a guy and sometimes a player's a dude, right? We refer to some players as guys, we refer to some players as dudes. Kayshon Boutte, Demario Douglas, both guys. I'm not ready to say either one's a dude yet. I'm not saying they can't be. I think they both totally could be dudes. Yeah. We got to find out. I'm just really glad we're going to find out here rather than have them go somewhere else and find out. Kind of like a Braxton Berrios thing, right? A guy that who Who are some of the other ones? I was talking to Bob Sosi about this today, and he had a really
Kenny
Moore. Kenny Moore is another one. Remember?
Yeah.
Kenny Moore was a UDFA.
That was a weird situation though, because I don't think he liked being on the team. Like he is not saying good things about him.
Right. But the idea, like, I'm glad it's not one of those situations. I'm glad those guys are here, and the Patriots are going to give them the chance in their uniform to figure out if they're dudes or not. Because if even one of them is, it's a game changer.
And they're in good positions. That's what I was going to say, because they don't have to be dudes right away. I really like this depth chart because they have Parker, Bourne, and Juju, 3 reliable veterans. You baseline know what they are. Kendrick Bourne looks like he's in line for a career year, looking like their best separator. Like he could be, I don't want to say a high volume guy quite yet, but I mean, if he keeps producing like this and the way they're running their system, it's very possible. So DeMario Douglas and Kayshon Boutte aren't going to be asked to have big roles. It's mix them in, see what they can do. If they can handle a certain workload, all right, we'll see what else they can handle and kind of ease them in. So I really like where they are there, especially considering the tight end position. I think even though it's just 2 guys, it's well stocked. You got Hunter Henry, Mike Gesicki, who shed his red non-contact jersey, so he's pretty much a full go in terms of that aspect. They released Anthony Ferkser. He wasn't at practice. I thought he was a guy who was almost a practice squad lock unless he wanted to go somewhere else. Because he's a veteran, he's not subjected to waivers, so he can kind of do whatever he wants. Hoping he'll be back because I like that he gave them kind of a chess piece element there. They waived Matt Sokol. He doesn't have any accrued seasons. Another guy I think is very likely to end up on the practice squad. They got rid of Scotty Washington and Johnny Lumpkin as well on waivers. I wasn't that surprised. Scotty hasn't really done much. He's really like a Gesicki where he's pretty much a receiver. He's not really a tight end, but hasn't been consistent catching the ball. A lot of bobbles and things like that. And Johnny Lumpkin, I just didn't think he showed as much as a blocker as you would want from somebody who's essentially a Mike Williams type where he's like, you know, a couple cheeseburgers away from being an offensive tackle, not to be condescending, but like he's a really big dude, not really a receiver. Any takes there?
No, not really. They'll elevate these tight ends. They'll have a 3rd tight end on game day, I believe it. But it always felt like they were going to be able to get those guys to the practice squad. It's kind of like the same thing I was saying was happy. Like that's a spot where if they used up a spot, you didn't need to do that. I will say though, Zach Kuntz got cut, so I would like to see them add another tight end maybe to that.
That is interesting. I didn't know about that. Okay,
he got waived by the Jets.
So I'm looking at just my roster. I separate tackle and interior offensive line. It's probably stupid considering how much they mix and match. But, you know, I like to break down the situation. So offensive tackle, Trent Brown, Calvin Anderson, who's back. Seemed like he was in great spirits. We got to talk to him in the locker room. Seems like a very sweet guy. He was talking about how grateful he was and how much he valued the opportunity now that he's got new perspective. Really glad to see him off the non-football injury list. Interesting thing there, and we can talk about that, how the tackle situation is going to work out when he comes back. And then as well, City So, Tyrone Wheatley Jr., who they traded Pierre Strong for from the Browns, and Vidarian Lowe, who they got from the Vikings for a 6th-round pick. Season-ending injured reserve, you got Connor McDermott. That seemed pretty likely, especially after they traded for the 2 young tackles and the fact that we haven't seen McDermott in a while. And then on waivers, we have Andrew Stuber, who Matt Groh and Belichick have said he's essentially a rookie. And I don't think he was put in a very good position, quite frankly, because he's clearly not an NFL left tackle. He's probably more of a right tackle or a guard. And Micah Vanterpool, he seemed more like a camp body. But how do you think this tackle situation is going to shake out? Considering Calvin Anderson, most of his career has been at left tackle. He's looked at his best when he's at left tackle. And Trent Brown can play both and has looked good at right tackle. So what is going on there in your opinion?
I think their plan, and I think their plan since the spring has been to just bring in as many pieces as possible, bring in as many players as possible. And, you know, if everybody has a 20% chance at panning out, then if you bring in 5 guys, you got a 100% chance you're going to find somebody. It's a fallacy, but like, if you're going to throw things against the wall and see what sticks, the more things you throw, the higher chance one of them sticks. And it feels like that's where they're at. You know, we hear Bill Belichick talk a lot about how September's a continuation of the preseason. We're going to see it with this offensive line. I think you're going to see moving pieces. I think they're going to keep trying things, and they're going to keep working to find that best 5, and they've given themselves as many options as possible. We'll see what happens with Riley Reif. I think this number ends up coming down like it does at wide receiver. I think Taekwondo ends up on IR. I think Riley Reif ends up on IR.
Yeah.
But, yeah, they're just going to experiment, so they're giving themselves options. I do like Vidarian Lowe. I liked him in the draft last year. I think there's something to be said. Look, ideally, a player's good all 2, 3, 4 years he's starting. And there are those guys that exist, but those are first-round picks. I do think there is value in looking for the guy that improves rate of improvement is faster than average because that's a guy that knows how to learn, knows how to get better. And you've seen a lot of those players really come on in the NFL, and I would categorize Vidarian Lowe as one of those players. A 4-year starter at Illinois that I thought really progressed his game from year to year. So if you need somebody who knows how to fit into the system quick and get good quick, Vidarian Lowe did it in college, so we'll see. But I still think it's kind of a crapshoot. I still think that they're just crossing their fingers and hoping that, you know, they'll keep throwing groups of 5 out there until one of them kind of looks good, and then they'll ride that as long as they can.
Do you think Vidarian Lowe is a left tackle? Because I know he's played some right tackle, but do you think his best position is on the left, or is he a true swing?
I think in their system, he's a true swing. Because as dumb as this sounds, Taylor, you know this, a big part of their right tackle mold is be big and strong.
Yeah.
And he is that. So I think he has the ability to play over there for them. I don't like, what do they want to do with Trent? So this is what's interesting. Calvin Anderson and Trent Brown have not been on the field together, period.
Yeah.
Like, you know, Trent Brown didn't practice at all in the spring. Calvin Anderson hasn't practiced at all in the summer. Calvin Anderson is a true left tackle. So is he moving a right tackle out of position? Is Trent moving a right tackle where he played in 2021? I feel like you can do some of that same math with Vidarian Lowe. He's probably more of a true left tackle than right tackle, but if we're doing the best 5 that Dante Scarnecchia used to always talk about, I think Vidarian Lowe gives you enough at right tackle where if Trent Brown's on the left side or Calvin Anderson's on the left side, I think he's probably a right tackle in that. He can be a right tackle in that context.
What do you think?
Definitely positional versatility. He can play on both sides, but I think the circumstances of this roster dictate him playing on the right side.
What do you think is the best tackle duo? Now, this is also considering Calvin Anderson hasn't played, so he's going to have a curve. And then, obviously, Vidarian Lowe is going to have his own learning curve because he's new to the system. Also, Tyrone Wheatley. I don't know what you think of him, but who do you think?
I'm not super high on him.
Okay.
It's Trent Brown and Mike Onwenu. And frankly, I don't think it's close.
That doesn't count because they would rather die, apparently, than put Mike Onwenu in
No,
tackles.
he played one snap at right tackle today during practice.
Did he? Okay, I missed that.
So, hopes up. But
oh my God,
if I can't do Mike Onwenu, it's assuming. So it's weird because a guy's coming off an illness. And we don't know what the illness was, but he's football cleared. But where's he at physically? He's going to need a build-up period. He's going to be ready for week 1. Assuming Calvin Anderson is ready, assuming he's in the shape he was in the spring, I do think it's Calvin Anderson on the left side, Trent Brown on the right side. I don't feel great about that. Behind that, I would say Trent Brown on the left side, Vidarian Lowe on the right side. The gap's not massive. You could sell me on that. I'm not like locked into it, but it's Trent Brown and Mike Onwenu. That's just what it is.
Yeah, I agree. The thing about Vidarian Lowe that scares me, man, is the inside counters that he allows. That scares the hell out of me because you can't really get around him. And I agree. I like him as a run blocker, but it just seems like he does not have the foot speed. I think he's a good athlete, but I don't think he has the foot speed to redirect and stop those. And with a guy like Mac, like I think that's a big deal breaker.
That's why I think you put him on the right side next to Mike Onwenu, who's probably your best offensive lineman, who can kind of help shade his inside. This is where it gets tricky, and this goes back to some of that 2022 draft stuff I was talking about. Taylor, I saw you said this on Twitter. I know a lot of people say this. You can cover up one spot on the offensive line. If you have 4 good offensive linemen, you can get by. Last year, Cole Strange was the guy they covered up. He was good at times, but you saw when David Andrews wasn't out there and they had to cover up James Ferentz at center instead, Cole Strange got benched. Like he couldn't finish games when David Andrews wasn't out there. The question becomes, can Cole Strange become a guy you don't need to cover up? Because if he can hold his own, you can keep Mike Onwenu at right tackle and experiment at right guard. You can do that because you can cover up Vidarian Lowe by having Mike Onwenu help him out. If Cole Strange needs to be helped, you have to put Mike Onwenu at right tackle because I think Riley Reif can hold his own at right guard. I actually think Antonio Mafi might be able to hold his own at right guard, especially if it's a couple weeks into the season. He sees a little more ball, a little more padded practices. I don't know about Vidarian Lowe at right tackle. I know about City So at right tackle. He's going to need to be covered up. Riley Reif's probably couldn't need to be covered up out there. He doesn't have the foot speed anymore. So this whole thing to me hinges on Cole Strange. And can he be better than he was last year?
I will say, I talked to him in the locker room. You would think with somebody who's lighter like Cole Strange, his problem would be that he gets pushed back. That's not actually true. He's pretty good at like re-anchoring and using his leverage to stop himself from just getting pushed back. His issue was really independent hand usage, and what people victimized him with was 2-hand swipes. So he would often just try to get into guys' bodies with both hands, and they would just push them aside. He'd be off balance, and they'd get right by him. I noticed it was like every sack that he gave up, it was the same thing. So I asked him today, I noticed that was kind of an issue with you last year. Is that something you worked on this offseason? And he told us, like you said, he gained weight. And he said the biggest reason for that was actually that he wasn't confident in his size and his strength. So he was being overzealous and trying to initiate contact. And you saw Cam Hayward just took him to the woodshed a few times because guys were smart and they knew that, especially if they were bigger and had more power. So he would overextend, get off balance, and then they'd get right by him. So hopefully, now that he's got another year in the system, obviously not playing in the summer, that's going to hurt. But if he's got that confidence in himself and says, okay, I don't have to necessarily like engage all the time, I can kind of be better with my hands and be more confident in my set and really have my weight back and be able to be stern and handle things better, that's a positive sign. So, one thing to look out for there.
Yeah.
So
I wondered, like, he was asked today about putting on weight, and I think he said he's up to 308 pounds. That's Patriots tackles usually play at least 315, 320. So I don't know how much, like, he might have put on weight. I don't, and that tells me he was playing under 300 last year, which for a tackle in the modern NFL is rare.
And to be fair, I mean, even still in this modern era where everyone's trying to run outside zone, it's not like there's not a lot of light guards. There's plenty of light guards in the league. It just at that point becomes a technician game. Like, obviously, there's a certain level where, like, if you are too light, yes, you are going to struggle. But if you're not like a Mike and Wonder where you're 330 and guys just can't get through you, or like an Antonio Mafi, then that's where your handwork, your leverage, your body weight distribution, that's where those things are more important. So hopefully those are things that he feels more confident in and can get under control. I feel like we pretty much touched on interior offensive line. So David Andrews, Mike Nwenu, Cole Strange, Riley Reef, but, plays both. Antonio Mafi, Jake Andrews. They released James Ferentz. They waived Bill Murray. Yeah,
he'll be back.
He's the Terminator. And they waived Bill Murray, Cody Rusey, and Chasen Hines. Now, I think Bill Murray and Cody Rusey, they've been living on the practice squad. They'll be back there.
They'll be back. Chasen Hines might be back too.
But I question because he changed his picture on Twitter to him no longer in a Pats uniform, and he said like on to bigger and better things or something like that. So I don't know if he's as much of a lock to come back on the practice squad as we think. So that said, from my perspective, what do you think are his chances of coming back?
He should be back. I thought he was good. I thought he had a good summer. Yeah. If they didn't, we sort of talked about this.
They want him back for sure.
We talked about this before. They have that. They handcuffed themselves having to keep those 3 linemen they drafted, even though 2 of them shouldn't play this year. And if those guys are 7th round picks, whatever, you burn the rookie contract, you put them on the practice squad. It's harder when they're 4th and 5th round picks. Had Jake Andrews and City So not needed to be on the roster, I think Chasen Hines is still here. Of that interior group, Ferentz, Rusey, right? Hines was the best player. So I think there's a chance he gets claimed because he put some good tape out there. They should be trying to get him back if they can get him back.
I agree. All right, we've covered the offense, and now it's time to pay the bills. Amit, throw it to our buddies at FanDuel, please and thank you.
Get ready for the NFL season with incredible offers from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets. Guaranteed. That's guaranteed. Plus, all customers who bet $5 will get $100 off NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Now is the best time to join FanDuel. It absolutely is. The app is easy to use, and you can be on everything from spreads to player props and more. So visit FanDuel.com/Boston. Kick off the NFL season with an offer you won't want to miss. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL.
Sick beat there. All right. Forward offense, moving to defense. Interior defensive line. We've got Devon Godshaw, Lawrence Guy, Christian Barmore, Daniel Equale, and one of my personal favorites, Sam Roberts, who I have been ringing that bell for a while. I was very happy to see that. They released Carl Davis Jr. It was a surprise externally, but when you look at his social media, he basically said, don't feel bad for me. Don't say, oh, that wasn't fair. He seemed to feel that he did not do enough to earn a roster spot, which you rarely hear players say that. It was really interesting. And they waived Jeremiah Farms, who I think we all expect to be back on the practice squad, and Justice Tavai, who I was curious that they released him so early, or waived him rather, because they don't have a lot of depth at true nose tackle. It's really just Godshaw right now. So what do you think is going to happen there? And what were your thoughts on Sam Roberts? Because I've been living in an echo chamber.
So first off, you called Sam Roberts. I forget if I was on the show with you or we were just talking a couple of weeks ago. And you're like, what about Sam Roberts on the roster? Really? And then maybe it's because you were in Green Bay and I wasn't. You saw him there, but then he had a good week leading up to the Titans game, played well in the Titans game, and it just shows you can make a late push for a roster. And it goes to something I talk about all the time. Not every training camp practice is the same. Certain practices hold way more weight than others. Those joint practices hold a ton of weight. He was good there. He was good in games. Excellent. And that's how he worked his way on the roster. So shout out to him for that. And shout out to you for seeing it. Like you said, you were the first one on that train. As for nose tackle, I do think they should add another nose tackle. I think they should add depth behind Devon Godshaw. Maybe Carl Davis comes back on the practice squad. The other guy that's interesting, Danny Shelton got cut by the Chiefs today.
Yes.
Old friend Danny Shelton. And first of all, people are going to be like, he's ancient. What are you talking about? He's only 30. I was surprised by that. I looked it up before I tweeted it. He's only 30. That's not old. That's not young, but it's not old. You're basically asking him to go out there and get in the way. I don't know that you need to give him a 53-man roster spot. You probably put him on the practice squad if you need, right? You're playing a strong inside running team. You elevate him. Wouldn't be a bad call to make in my mind. That's a guy I could see having a role on this team. I'm sure there's other nose tackles that got cut today. I saw Maurice Hurst got cut. I know they like him, but he's more that
more of a penetrator,
athletic
right?
Interior. What?
Yeah. He's more of a penetrator, right?
Yeah, athletic. He's more like that Christian Barmore, Daniel Qualley type. Now, he's still a guy on my radar because they might just bring him to the practice squad because they like him and get him in the building. And then, hey, if you need some, Barmore gets hurt, Qualley gets hurt, you have a guy. But, yeah, Danny Shelton is a guy I would like to see them call. And I don't know where he's at health-wise. He only played one game last year. Maybe he's, physically cooked. But just on the surface, that kind of player, I do think it would make – some people bring up Mike Purcell in the chat. I saw he got cut too. He's sort of similar.
No, he's not allowed in Foxborough after what he did to David Andrews.
Oh, I forgot that was him. You're right. Yeah, no on Mike Purcell. Good call. Yeah. No on Mike Purcell. No on Kenny Robinson, if you remember him.
Yeah.
The Panther safety that was starting all the fights last year.
Yeah.
I meant to see if he got cut today. I'd like to see them add another nose tackle. Just Danny Shelton being out there, I think would make a lot of sense. Kenny Robinson waived by the Steelers. So he is available, but no.
I really like Danny Shelton. I was heartbroken when he ended up getting cut. So I'm all for that one. And also Lawrence Guy is 33.
Yeah.
So, 30 is not that old for an interior defensive line.
I don't know. Again, I don't know if Shelton's still the same player he was when he was here the first time. But if he's close, there's a role for him.
All right. Edge defender. We've got Matt Judon, Dietrich Wise, Josh Uche, Anthony Jennings, Keon White. Pretty straightforward. No one really, they were not on the bubble in any way. Anthony Jennings may have teetered to the bubble, but I think,
he was maybe earlier in camp. He solidified himself in the middle there.
Agreed. Physically unable to perform, Trey Flowers. He is still on the list because he was out of practice today. And they waived Ronnie Perkins and Carson Wells. Ronnie Perkins, I didn't think he had a shot at the 53. I thought maybe he did because he was at practice today, and he was one of the last guys that we heard about not making the roster. But I do think he's going to be back on the practice squad. What do you think about that?
I think he'll be back. I think anybody who was at practice today, there's a good chance that they're on the practice squad. So I think he'll be back on the practice squad. But I just talked about the Sam Roberts, right? Those Green Bay practices, the padded practices leading up to the Titans game. Ronnie Perkins wasn't there. He played in the game and he played well in the game. But that, to me, that was my last roster spot when I was doing my last projection, was Sam Roberts versus Ronnie Perkins. And it came down to 2 good weeks versus 2 good hours, basically. And so I think Ronnie Perkins definitely showed enough to stick around on the practice squad and continue developing. But to me, Sam Roberts had the edge on him because there was just more there for the coaches to look at. Agreed.
All right, linebacker. We've got Juwan Bentley, Jelani Tavai, Mac Wilson Sr., who I did not think was going to make the roster. Marte Mapu, he's a safety. I don't know why they have him at linebacker, but, whatever. Chris Board, who, as you've said, is like a Brandon Bolden type where he's a special teamer, but he could play enough linebacker that it's fair to put him there. They waived Calvin Munson, or I'm sorry, they released Calvin Munson. They waived Joe Giles-Harris, who was actually at practice today. I thought that was surprising. And they already waived Diego Fagot. Calvin Munson, I believe it was Karen reported that he is expected
Mark
to be
Daniels.
Mark Daniels, I apologize. Yeah. My bad, Mark. That he's expected to be back. Any real thoughts there? Is that another? Actually, yeah. What did you think of the Mac Wilson? Because I thought we were kind of on the same page if he was pretty squarely on the bubble.
Marte Mapu Insurance, they want another athletic linebacker. He plays teams as well, and they've kind of let some of those special teams guys go. So not super surprised, especially once you saw some of the, you saw them go thin at running back. It was like, all right, well, they're probably opening up spots for something on defense because the rest of the offense was kind of cut and dry. You sort of knew they were keeping on the offensive line. With receivers, it was either 5 or 6, but that spot was kind of what it was. Even cutting Bailey Zappe, too. It was clear they were opening up more spots on defense.
Yep. All right, cornerback. Also, Mac Wilson, special teams, whatever. I'm not going to get into that. Cornerback. Now, this is one that was surprising because this is one where every time I did a roster projection, I was like, I feel like I don't know what they're going to do with Shaun Wade and mere speed. After Isaiah Bolden's unfortunate injury, I thought it was pretty obvious that he was probably going to land on injured reserve. You saw even before he was injured, he needs more cooking. He needs more experience. He needs to learn, get used to the NFL game. So I think that was kind of a best case scenario for him.
There was a question. I wondered if they would roster him, then IR him. In order to make him eligible in case, it got to an emergency point where they needed another corner late in the year, they'd have him available. I think that was a fair question, but they just, cause you'd still get that roster spot, but I don't know. I guess they didn't want to try getting Ramondre Stevenson through waivers after Bailey Zappe. So.
And I also thought the thing is, I was on the same page where I'm like, are they going to really get rid of Isaiah Bolden for the whole year? If Shaun Wade hadn't taken a step forward this preseason, I would have thought you can't get rid of Isaiah Bolden because he's just your next guy who's big, athletic. Yeah, it's going to be a learning curve, but you don't really have many other options. I actually spoke to Shaun Wade today because I thought when he popped against the Texans against John Mechie, I was like, he usually gets burned in the slot or in general. So I was kind of surprised by that. And I thought he had the touchdown against Jaden Reed against the Packers, but really I thought that was a lot of other factors, and I thought his coverage was pretty okay. It was like, Jordan Love had forever to hold the ball. Adrian Phillips may have been responsible for giving him help inside. I'm not sure what exactly the call was there, so I'm not going to judge too harshly. But I thought Shaun Wade did better. I asked him about that today, how he progressed. He said confidence was a big part of that, which obviously at cornerback, confidence is everything because you can have all the athleticism in the world. If you don't trust what you're seeing, you don't trust your instincts, you're kind of screwed. Jack Jones, for better or worse, trusts the hell out of his instincts, and it leads to him being in a position to make a lot of plays. Amir Speed. Again, Brandon Bolden type, where he's really more of a special teamer, especially right now, maybe for the duration of his career. But we saw him in man coverage, kind of at safety at times against tight ends. We saw him outside at cornerback. I thought he was really good at run support, had a couple nice plays in the preseason. And they waived Quandre Mosley and Rodney Randall Jr. I don't think that was really surprised anybody. Any other kind of big takeaways there?
I think with Shaun Wade, it's interesting you bring up that confidence thing. Here's a guy that was a highly recruited player coming out of high school, 4 or 5-star recruit coming out, out of high school, played slot corner at Ohio State, played it very well for 2 years. And then he was a projected first-round pick going into his 3rd year at Ohio State, and they moved him to the boundary, and he just couldn't do it. He's not a boundary corner. Can't figure it out. And I think that shot his confidence. I think he essentially had to relearn how to play a little bit, and that's why he's been a project player the last couple of years. If they're committed to playing him in the slot, maybe he's refound that confidence he had at Ohio State. The other thing in that is if they plan on playing him in the slot and they kept him and they kept Miles Bryant, that tells me that Jonathan Jones and Marcus Jones are still going to be playing on the boundary this year. So you can take that for what it's worth. People know how I feel about that, especially with Marcus Jones. I don't love it. It's not that he can't do it. I just think at a certain point, height is height. But I do think that you're going to see those smaller primary boundary corners playing on the outside again this year.
I will say, Shaun Wade got plenty of reps on the outside as well, both in practice and the preseason. Once you saw Isaiah Bolden out, Wade started playing. He was mixed in before that, but he started playing more. And he also showed that he could play some safety. I asked him about that. He was like, yeah, the biggest thing is, because especially the biggest thing with, I think, free safety is, in the Patriots system, you don't need to be a playmaker. That's a bonus. The entire point is you will not give up posts. Can't give up anything deep in the middle, and you have to be that last line of defense where you're a reliable tackler. And he said, yeah, at that point, I just kind of get back to my fundamentals where, You got to force him to the boundary. You play the inside hip, yada, 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 football stuff. But I thought that was pretty interesting as well. Safety, another one that's it's straightforward, but there was one kind of surprising guy that got waived. So Kyle Duggar, Adrian Phillips, Jabril Peppers, Jalen Mills, we knew they were going to make the team. Joshua Bledsoe was somebody who, I don't know about you, but I went back and forth on because I didn't think he deserved a roster spot. I told you about this. I was like, I don't think he deserves a roster spot, but I know that you had him on. And Brad Hawkins, I did think he made a couple plays in the preseason, but not enough that he deserved to make the 53. I think he's probably a guy who can make the practice squad. What were your thoughts on Joshua Bledsoe? And did you ever come around to like maybe he's more of a practice squad guy at this point?
So I was kind of with you. I again, when I do my roster projection, it's not what I would do. It's what I think they're going to do. I'm trying to read them and how much he was playing, who he was playing with in the preseason. That told me he was a part of it. Now, maybe he's a guy they know they're going to elevate off the practice squad. He still will be. They were treating him like a guy they were going to keep. The guy, the role he was practicing in, the usage he was getting generally reflects a guy that makes the initial 53. So that's where I was coming from. I'm with you. I don't know that he's one of the 53 best players on the roster. I don't think he is, but I was a little surprised to see them telegraph that and then end up waiving him.
That's fair, especially because he's at the end of his deal. It would be one thing if he was like a second-year player and you're cutting that contract as someone who, I agree, the way they were using him, like he was in the rotation with Jalen Mills, Miles Bryant, and Joshua, and he is Joshua Bledsoe. But he was in that 3-safety rotation in the first game, so I'm like, okay, they clearly think highly of him because these are their top backups, and he was playing a lot of different roles, like a Marte Mapu, to be very honest, where he's playing linebacker, he's playing strong safety, he's playing free safety. But again, now he has time to cook. They have plenty of options. He's not somebody that's really going to need to play this year if all goes well. Kicker, they traded Nick Folk to the Titans. Now, this seemed pretty likely. We thought that I know you also had an idea that they might kick both, which was fair because Chad Ryland, we saw in windy conditions, and I saw it in Green Bay as well in those joint practices. He missed 2 or 3 kicks in like a day because he has this tendency to kick very high. He's got the powerful leg. His kicks go so high that you can't always tell if they're in or not because they go over the goalposts. But because of that, the wind will take them sometimes. And if it's a really gusty day, his kicks will just miss and it doesn't look good. So it was very fair to think that Nick Folk might have actually made the roster so they could have some insurance there. But there was also the possibility that they moved him. His family's in Texas, so it made sense that he would probably go somewhere. I think they were talking about it a few places. It seemed like the Rams, the 49ers, and the Titans were the most likely destinations. He wound up in Tennessee. What were your thoughts on that?
It's what they should have done all along. He had too much value to cut him. I didn't love the idea of keeping 2. I think they thought about it. Mm-hmm. I thought maybe they could have gotten a little bit more. I wonder if it was a thing where they kind of honored where he wanted to go. Mm-hmm. But yeah, this is how this always should have ended. They got this one right.
Yep, I agree. Punter, Bryce Behringer won the job. Corliss Waitman was waived. Do you think he'll be back on the practice squad?
Yeah, I think they want to keep a lefty punter around, just kind of prepare for that in games. Also, you have a rookie. There's some natural hesitance that comes with that, having a plan B 100%. That's already in the building that you've experienced with. Now, Waitman's a guy I could see maybe not getting claimed. I don't think he's going to get claimed off waivers, but you get a couple weeks in the season, somebody's punter gets hurt or really sucks. Like he's probably going to be one of the top free agent punters available. He's on the practice squad. So maybe he gets a chance to go to the 53 somewhere else. But I think at least to start the season, he'll be on the practice squad. I'll give you another interesting number on this too.
Yes, please.
If I can find it here. So this is why I think it's important. I honestly also wouldn't be surprised if the Patriots signed a rookie signed a kicker, any kicker, not a rookie kicker, actually a veteran kicker to the practice squad. Because the last time a team had a rookie kicker and punter both week 1 was the Miami Dolphins in 2015. The last time a rookie kicker and punter both played at least 10 games for the same team in the same year was 2018 with the Raiders. Isn't something that happens a lot. Might not be bad to have insurance plans. They shouldn't need them. You drafted these guys or you drafted them. The expectation should be they play 17 games. But also maybe have insurance, especially given the way their drafts have gone recently. If that tells us anything, they should have a plan B ready.
How the hell did you find that?
Pro Football Reference. I searched. I did
looked it up?
Game Finder. I put in the criteria. Yeah. I had to do it individually. So I had to do like kickers. So I did like season finder, right? Only kickers and punters, rookie year, played at least 10 games. And then I had to see, I looked at each year and I said, all right, there are 2 guys for the same team this year, 2 guys for the same team. And then I did the same thing in the single game finder with week 1 games.
You're a pro's pro, buddy. I appreciate you.
Oh, I poke around on Pro Football Reference. Michael Hurley will tell you that.
Yeah, you are to like data what I am to film.
Yeah, exactly.
Although
Which
you're
is
very
funny
good
because
at
I hate
film,
math.
I'm not. I do too. I'm absolutely terrified. Long snapper. Any takeaways there?
No. Tucker Addington, I didn't even realize had gotten signed after getting cut by the Patriots. He got cut by, I think it was the Seahawks. He got cut by somebody today. So good for him. He's hanging around.
Absolutely.
But
let's see. He is...
I bet Joe Cardona's Jaguars. Okay.
Jaguars.
I knew it was something with like teal, blue, green. I bet. First of all, I appreciate this is classic Barth what you're doing right here, covering every position, even if it doesn't really need to be covered. I love that.
Gotcha,
I bet Joe Cardona's a little relieved because different kickers want the ball held differently, so that means snap differently. Different punters want the ball snapped differently. He gets to just focus on work. Well, he gets to focus on work with like one battery. He's snapping to Ryland or he's snapping to Behringer, period. And then Ryland will kick, but Behringer's the holder. So a little less on his plate. I'm sure he's going to enjoy that the next couple of days.
Absolutely. We love Joe Cardona. Coverage specialists. Last position on the roster. We have Matthew Slater. We have Brendan Schooler. They were locks. Waived Raleigh Webb. I guess you could call him a receiver because he plays receiver a lot in the preseason and like with the threes in practice. But I mean, I could not bring myself to call him a receiver. No offense, but like realistically, that's not what he is. Practice squad?
I think so. I think he'll be back. Calvin Munson insurance, Amir Speed insurance. Keep a couple specialists around.
Yeah, because they lost to Marcus Mitchell, which broke my heart. And what about Jordan Healig?
Did he get signed anywhere?
I'm looking it up right now. Don't see that he signed anywhere. I wonder what the situation is with him then. Like, was he hurt or what's going on there? Maybe
because I just realized they wanted less specialists. I don't know. That one was still weird to me.
Yeah, especially considering how much time he spent with Slater and Schooler. But Bud, that's the end of the roster. We got through everybody.
There we go.
Not going to take up any more
for now.
time.
I hate the initial.
For now, of course.
For the record, I hate the initial roster. I hate because how many teams actually play a game with their initial 53-man roster? Very few, if any.
No.
I love Thursday. Thursday night, we'll have the practice squads built. We'll have waiver claims in. We'll know who's on IR. Thursday night, that's nothing against what we just did. I understand why this is notable. I understand why this is what you talk about. But like the whole thing, because we have to answer a million people. I'm getting a million tweets all day. They don't have a backup quarterback. What are they going to do? Back gets hurt. The offensive line. No, they're going to have a backup quarterback. They don't play for 2 weeks. They're going to have a backup quarterback. It might be somebody they elevate from the practice squad, but they will have a second quarterback dressed on game day. The only one on like wide receiver, 6 wide receivers. What's the point? They're going to have 5. Tyquan's going to go on IR. The only spot, honestly, I wonder about is running back.
Yeah.
There's too many other guys to sign. So the 2 guys who are going on IR, Tyquan, Riley Reef, I would think. That's not a report. That's just reading the tea leaves.
Yeah.
All right. We know, according to Mark Daniels, Calvin Munson's getting one of those spots.
Mm-hmm.
Does Ty Montgomery get the other? Does J.J. Taylor get the other? Because there's some other guys who think like Carl Davis could be back. Maybe Ronnie Perkins comes back. Maybe they just sign the quarterback outright. Mm-hmm. Maybe they signed Bailey Zappe outright or Colt McCoy outright. And then, you go to practice squad elevations. It sounds like you can't get J.J. Taylor on the practice squad. So is it Ty Montgomery being elevated? Is it somebody we don't even know? I'll tell you this today, another name to watch. And I try to limit myself because it's very easy. Guys get cut around the league. Call that guy, call that guy, call that guy, call that guy. I already brought up Danny Shelton. I already brought up Zach Kuntz. I'll give you one more. I would love for the Patriots to call Jack Coletto. He got cut by the Niners today. Now, he might get claimed before they get him because he had a really good preseason. If you're not familiar with Jack Coletto, he was on their team at the Shrine Bowl out of Oregon State. He plays fullback, tight end, off-ball linebacker. He's a two-way player. And he's kind of that, like, in San Francisco, they were looking at him. They were like, people thought Juszczyk was going to be the surprise roster cut. That's how good Coletto was
I did not
this summer. I don't know that everybody thought that, but I saw some people speculate.
Enough. If anybody's thinking it, I'm intrigued.
So he's a good blocker, right? He can give you some tight end depth. And also, you didn't even play linebacker. You can do that. Obviously, he plays special teams. Of course, he plays special teams. They're familiar with him with the Shrine Bowl. I really thought they were going to draft him. That is a guy I would like to see them call because he's played a little bit of traditional running back too. Now, he's not a traditional pass catching back, but he can handle that role. He's been essentially in that role as a fullback. So that's another guy I'd like to see him call. I think maybe he gets claimed. He'll definitely get to the Packers practice squad, if not the Niners practice squad, if not, because I think the plan, even if it's from the practice squad, is for him to, I think use checks in the last year of his deal is for him to follow use check. But that's an interesting guy I'd call.
All right, buddy. Well, I'm not going to take up any more of your time. Your insights are
No,
highly valued as always. This was fun. Actually, are there any other receiving backs you can think of? Just because I'm thinking, if Ty Montgomery, even if he's back on the roster, gets hurt, they lose J.J. Taylor, I think they want some kind of insurance, and I don't think they think it's Kevin Harris. Is there anybody else you could see who was waived today that you think they might have interest in?
Not today, and let me make sure he didn't sign, but no, he didn't sign. Kenyon Drake got cut last week. Yeah. That's a guy I would call. The only other guy, but I'm pretty sure he made the team. Evan Hull made the Colts with Jonathan Taylor holding out.
After that pass block, he had to. Like, Twitter would have gone feral if they cut that guy.
Kenyon Drake to me makes a lot of sense for them. I don't know why they didn't call him before. If they were going to not sign Damian Harris, I thought Kenyon Drake made a lot of sense when they signed James Robinson, who by the way got cut today. So that's the guy I'd look at.
All right, buddy. Well, I appreciate you. Everybody here knows who you are. His handle's right there. I'm not going to do the whole regular spiel, but just let everybody know what work you got. Plug away.
Yeah, 985thesportshub.com. I'll have reactions to the initial roster and a little something on the 2022 draft coming out either tonight or tomorrow.
Fantastic. You all know that Alex does excellent work. Make sure you check that out. I myself will also have some reactions trying to come out tonight for the initial 53. Again, understanding that this is not the roster that they're going to head into the season with. But thank you all for tuning in. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. And we will see you next time.